as possible, okay? So, I know in this time it's hard to concentrate for 1 hour lecture, I know. So I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to turn off your cell phone or turn it off from the notifications and then put it in the opposite way, because we know we are not on call, correct? So therefore, at least the next hour, we're not going to have emergencies from the hospital calling us that someone broke a tooth and we have to go up and put some splints on, correct? Okay, we're going to do that, and for 50 minutes, okay? Can we do it? Yes, and I'm going to have questions, so I'm going to be calling your names, okay? And if I cannot pronounce it, you just have to tell me how can I pronounce it better. Okay, let's get started. So when we talk about a study design, what we really meant is how can we figure it out how something was set up? So what is the process to understand that, to understand the question that we're asking? So often we have so many different study designs, correct? So many possibilities. There are just some examples of that. So, first question, what is the best study design? What do you think? RCTs, what else? Here, RCTs, here?
The systematic review.
Systematic reviews, okay, what else? Systematic reviews of RCTs, okay. What else? Yes, RCT seems to have the most of the votes. Well, I would just let you know that it depends. It depends what is your research question, because not every research question can be answered with an RCT. What about if I tell you I want to know about the impact of breast milk on caries on infants? Are we going to allocate a group of mothers to do breastfeeding and the other bottle? No, correct? We cannot do that. So sometimes we have certain constraints. Could be budget, could be time, but sometimes could be also ethical, rational, and we will have an amazing lecture after this about ethical considerations, what we can, what we should, and what we cannot do. So it depends on what is your research question. I'm just going to move these because I'm concerned I'm going to, I cannot fracture, I have 3 kids, I don't have time. So when we talk about descriptive studies or observational studies, we tend to divide it in 2 large groups. One are descriptives and the other are analytic studies. So in descriptives, we don't need an advanced hypothesis, although we can have it. We can accept that association may or not may be causal, I mean, inferring causality, or and also we can use pre-existing data. So often when we think about, especially when we start doing research, our supervisor tells us, well, let's do an observational study. Let's review what charts, what is information there. And inside our heart, we just get a little bit gloomy, like, really, we are going to use data from charts? So today, what I want to let you know is how amazing this study can be, how useful and what richness of information we can gather from that. So this is a real example of one. I like really to use this as an initial in the lecture because it provides you a lot of information. So this is the number of deaths associated with tractor injuries in the state of Georgia in the US in the 70s. So they were noticing, researchers, that there were an unusual number of deaths, so they wanted to know what was going on and how they can prevent it. So this graph is by month, okay, by month of death. So I want you to tell me, what do you see, not why it's happening, okay? So what do you see? Where are the peaks of deaths?
In
July, okay. And you have another 2 peaks, correct? So we have 3 peaks throughout the year. Now I'm going to ask you, why do you think it's happening? Why do you think we have 3 peaks? The state of Georgia is, is a large state in the U.S. So why do you think we have unusual peaks of death in 3 points in the year?
During the harvesting season, maybe?
Harvest season, that's one. What about the other two?
People traveling,
People traveling, why?
like spring break or summer.
Spring break, that could be. What we are doing, this is called brainstorming session. So when you have data that is presented to you, everyone starts throwing in, sort of, okay, could be this, could be that. So could be, it's an alternative. What else? So it's, harvesting, what else? Planting, that's the other reason why. So you have, usually they do the planting in March and April, and they have the harvest in July and August. Why do you have another peak in October?
Transportation, maybe. The harvesting.
Could be, but not. But, good attempt. Which other attempt?
There may be the rainy season.
This is a cultural component that's happening here. It's not happening there. But that's very interesting. Never heard that rationale, but it was not. What else? What else? So what happened is that in Georgia, they have two harvest seasons. They have the first one in July, and then the other one in fall there. That's the reason why they have 3 peaks. Now, let's go about the number of deaths by time of the day. So what do you see? Before lunch is 1 peak. Lunch there is at noon. What else? Sorry? Yes? 5 p.m. is another peak. And then where else? Yes, 11, 12 is 1 peak. 4 to 5 is another peak. And then? Yes, 6 to 7. So why do you think we have 3 peaks? They are tired. Why? They're hungry. So, glucose levels go down. We're thinking about the food. We made stupid mistakes, and then an accident happened. Okay? So, before lunch, before dinner is around 7, 8. So that's when it happens. But then, why do you think we have that peak between 4 and 5 when the day is not ended?
The hot weather.
Hot weather, not as hot as here. Not hot, but not as hot as here, not necessary. What else? Congestion because of traffic, it could be, but thinking that it's an agricultural area. But that's a good attempt. What else?
Getting darker.
Getting dark is actually later, around 7, 8. But it's a very good, because I'm from Peru, around the equatorial line, so we actually, at 5, 6, it's really like, no. They're northern, so then the light stays longer. That's very good.
School gets closed around maybe
And what happened?
3:30, and the children were on the
Yes,
streets. So maybe
unfortunately, that is an add-on of deaths, because at that time, kids would be taken off from the school buses, and kids, when we used to be kids, were just rushing, so they didn't want to go through the regular roads, and they will cross the path, trying to get to their homes, and then they would be killed by a tractor who was working, unfortunately. Good one. Okay, so this is now the death associated by age group. So what do you see? Where are the peaks? 60 to 69.
60.
Yes, that's one peak, and then the other peak? 10 to 19. So now let's ask ourselves, why do you think it's happening? Why do we have the peak from 10 to 19? The children that were coming from school, and yes, teenagers. Just being a teenager is a risk factor, no matter which outcome, correct? I have one teenager now, so I can tell you, no matter what. Just like age factor, it's always there. Not only because of the school, remember this is in the 70s, it's because at that time in Georgia, 11 years old was the age when the kids will help at home in summer, and they will help in the field, but they will also start driving the tractors at that time. So that's an add-on, okay? And then the 60s, why the 60s and not the 70s? Do you think? Yes, retirement age. So usually in the US it's around 65 years old retirement, and then you have fewer population, fewer individuals working. Now it could be that actually the amount of accidents are similar between the 50s and the 60s, but as we get older, our survival odds decreases. So that's one of the reasons why we have the peaks. So what all this is the summary of what you answer from these graphs, correct? So that's what descriptive studies are for you to actually come up with facts of something happening, and then you come up with rationales of why those things are happening. So what happened after that is that it helps you to come up with a hypothesis, because imagine all these reasons of these tractors, correct? If I give you $1 million and I tell you, I want you that in 5 years, we decrease the number of deaths associated to injuries because of accidents with tractors. What would you do with that money? What would you do with that money?
I will try to.
Microphone?
Okay.
Wait, with 1 million
Yeah.
to prevent that death.
Yes. You hire you by a statistician, and then what would you do?
I will try. No, I got blank.
Okay, pick one thing. We have children dying.
Yes, we got.
We have elderly dying.
Yes.
We have, what else we have? We have time, some specific times where we have peaks. So from all those things, choose one thing. Which one will be the specific intervention you will be interested in?
The children one.
Children, perfect. So that's your target. Now, what could you do about the children?
I will look like the cause of their death, like maybe they crossing or maybe they what, and then find how to prevent them.
There you go. So you are coming now with the next phase, that is an analytic study. So my hypothesis is that I am going to do an intervention to avoid the children's bus stop, for example, or making fences so they cannot cross and they are forced to go through the pathways. And then I will test that for 2 years. And then I will check it out if in 2 years, indeed, we have decreased significantly the number of deaths due to kids going through the farms. What else would you do? So, what would you do with $1 million?
Maybe like the fence that you told, I think,
Mhm.
for creating that fence,
Mhm.
it can be used.
So we'll go with a fence, perhaps even making lights or
Making
putting
lights.
lights. Which other group would you choose? The 60s, the senior. So if you're choosing that as a target, what would you do? Which type of intervention you do? Sorry?
Limit the age of driving the tractors.
Yes, limit, but it will be hurtful because we will all get 60s at some point. So it will be hurtful. But what could we do regarding driving and
We can
elderly?
give them incentives maybe.
You can give them incentive, yes, or you can. That's a very good idea, to actually increase the number of trauma centers, because what happens is that often there is a long drive to go, and if you can improve or enhance the emergency system so we can have a better access. That's a very good idea. Any other idea you could do in terms of driving
Trainings, maybe. Trainings.
Trainings, or you can also do eye certification, eye checkups more often to see, because then sometimes even in nowadays in the US, when you reach certain age, you have to be checked, and if you don't pass, you are only allowed to drive during the day for seniors, so something like that. So as you see, we can go and on and on and on with so many ideas of intervention. And that is why descriptive studies are so interesting when they are really well placed, because you can come up with all these possibilities, and in your discussion section, you always is recommended to say, next step will be, and then you can propose A, B, C, D, and all these things that can be a line of research for you guys, okay? So when we talk about descriptive studies, we talk about the usual suspects. And what is that? The variables that we want to help to describe the population we're working on. So when we read a manuscript in the study population, we always say our population was age blah blah blah, and all this, exactly, all that description is the usual subject. Now, why we do that? Why we need to describe the population? Why me as an author need to describe the population to you as a reader? Because sometimes when we write that, it's like, we have to do this, and we have to, but we have to. So I will tell you why. So, you go out this weekend, for the ones who are single, and then meet someone very interesting, correct? Or remember, for the one who have partners, when you guys met the first time. So you had a cool night, and then what do you do on the next day, or as soon as you arrive home? You text, correct? Who will you text? Your BFF, correct? Yes. So what do you do in the text? What do you say to your BFF? Hey, I met someone, correct? And then what else do you do? You describe the person, whatever is interesting for you. The hair, the stature, the hands, the eyes, whatever it is. Why do you do that? Why do you go and try to be as descriptive as possible of that person you met to your best friend? Exactly. So then the other person can visualize what is the type of person you met. So it's the same concept. When you write your study population, make sure that you can describe as much as possible. So me as a reader can understand and decide, oh, these things are very similar to my study population. This not. I can work perhaps gathering the data of this part, but not the whole part. Because otherwise, the last thing you want is you don't really understand what was the study population. So the more you explain, the better it's going to be for the reader to actually understand why and what and when you did that. And then the other important thing in descriptive studies is how you present the data. Because like anything, we like beautiful things, correct? Whatever beautiful it is for us, because it's very subjective, but we like beautiful things. So, descriptive, we have two big groups, cross-sectional study and longitudinal studies. So, Christy already gave us the introduction of some of these. I'm just going to go a little bit more in detail. So, while we have cross-sectional studies, we're talking about a specific population, disease and exposure status that are measured at the same time. So, that means that it is a snapshot of whatever disease we're looking or whatever condition is happening in the moment you get the data collection. So, for example, we have Noon that soon has to go because she has to check something in the lab. They call her immediately, so I have to check something about the candida samples that are not working, so she needs to leave now. And then one of our amazing photographers come and take a picture of the whole room. And then her dean is going to say, I saw the picture in Instagram, you were not in the workshop. And then what happened, is that true? Well, at the moment of the picture, she was not. And sometimes we can gather information from pictures, but sometimes we need a video, correct? So a cross-sectional study is more like a picture. The measurement of disease, the output on how can we assess the disease is through prevalence. Okay, now this is childhood obesity in the USA, okay? So all these lines, this is a classic graph, correct? And we see each line, each color means something, and then we understand. What if I then showed you this? Child obesity among the 2 to 4 years old, okay? And then I divided by colors. Am I gathering more data? Yes. I'm gathering more information than just the lines? Yes. But what about if I tell you that I want to know how the obesity has been changing in 2023, comparing the states who were had a decline, the increase, or the same? Which one would you understand better in the snapshot? So this is relevant. Why? Because depending on who is your target population, you might want to be sure that how you present the data. For example, when we go to a conference like the IADR conference, that is the International Association for Dental and Craniofacial Research, we might want to use much more scientific graphs, because the people who attend are actually going to get it. But if you are going to be talking with policymakers, if you are going to talking to the community leaders, what are they going to understand? They are going to understand this better. So the point of how you present the data is very important in cross-sectional studies. The advantage is that they do not require a follow-up and is less costly, and they often represent a population rather than a small subpopulation. What is the disadvantage is that because you are measuring disease and exposure at the same time, there is no temporality, so you cannot infer causation, okay? So examples. First, this is a study that one of the pediatric dental residents did in our department some years ago, because we did not know what was the demographic distribution of our population. And we wanted to justify that for funding for the state, saying that we indeed see a lot of special care needs population, and we see a lot of low-income population. So her study actually helped to address that and to show that to the government, the state government, why it was really relevant to help the funding. But most importantly for us is this. At that time, she found out that the mean age of the patient we're seeing in our pedo clinic was 9 years old. Dental students 11, and then the residents 8. So, how many pediatric residents or pediatric specialties are here? Raise their hand. 1. 1? 2. Okay. Well, usually are more, so it's interesting that we're having a more demographics of different specialties. Okay, so imagine you are in the pediatric dental clinic, and I am telling you that the mean age is 11 years old. What do you think? Yes, you're frowning, correct? Why are you frowning? Too old, you're right. They are too old for a pedo clinic. So this was in the 2008. So our chair then, what he did is, because you may assume things, correct? But it's different when you see black and white. So he launched a huge campaign among all the pediatric clinics, not pediatric dental clinics, pediatric clinics around, explaining why oral health is so relevant, and making systems so they can refer their babies. So after 4 or 5 years, we repeated this study, and the mean age went to 6 years old. That's a huge change from 11, because we were really seeing the 0 to 1 year old a lot. So this can also help and improve the quality aspects of your own clinic. This is another example of another of our residents who wanted to look at the impact of residents who were rotating in the general anesthesia rooms in the hospital. Why? Because she was a resident herself, and the faculty were complaining and saying that whenever they have a resident, that slows down. So they have to see fewer cases. And she said, no, that's not true. So she did a study, and she actually demonstrated that there was a little longer cases, but they were not statistically significant. So, okay. This is our resident who wanted to look at the serum vitamin D associated with ECC in special care needs in the hospital. Now he found association, but what I wanted to let you know, he had to look at over 5,000 charts in the hospital. We're talking at the time where they were paper charts, okay? So that was a lot of work. He did amazing. From 5,000 he went to 200. But what I want to bring it up is that whenever you can, in your manuscript, please put a flow chart. Because the flow chart really, again, is about visualization. It helps the reader to understand better your study. And at the end, that's what we want. We want the most amount of people not only reading our work, but understanding our work. Because the more they understand our work, the more they're going to use as a reference to, and will be helpful for them, because that's what we want in science, correct? That things get better and lines of research are set up. So this is another great study from Tessa, who is one of our PhD students, and she did a fantastic longitudinal cohort work on the impact of breastfeeding on early childhood caries on little kiddies. And because this is a PhD work, so we're talking about longitudinal data, correct? So hers was not only very robust methodologically, but also she accomplished it during the COVID time. That was actually a miracle. So what she does in this first paper, she explained and let us know what was the type of population that she worked on and what were the initial associations that she found in terms of variables that could be related to ECC. Now, let's go to longitudinal studies, okay? We are also describing something that is happening, but we, instead of just seeing the person one, we're seeing the person more than one, okay? So this is a resident who was interested in to see factors associated to adverse outcomes of the trauma in the hospital. And he found out, as we know now, that whenever the trauma happens, even if you can put a little bit of something to coat those dental tubes, like my Vitrobond or glass ionomer, it will really significantly decrease the odds of that tooth end up with root canal treatment or extractions. Now, all these are manuscript published from students and postdocs, just like you all. So what is the importance of descriptive studies, as we said? Besides all the information that I gave it to you, we also use this at target efforts at early detection. So these are graphs of breast cancer in the US by age and by race. So what do you see? What do you see? Where is the peak? Yes, we have the peaks here. And you know, as you see, all races start the same and then they open, correct? Around where? When? Here, you see? Around 40, correct? So, why it is important for the policymaker and for the research in breast cancer, researcher in breast cancer? Because with this, you can actually decide which line of research are you going to be working on. Are you going to be targeting Asian Americans? Are you going to target Caucasians? And when are you going to target? Are you going to target as a prevention in the 40s or the 30s? Or are you going to do it actually during treatment in the 60s and the 70s? So all these descriptive studies are rich to provide information for community level activities. Place. We know now more than ever that where you live impacts which diseases you have, correct? Is very, not only because of the heat, but all the climate change that happens. And you have nature and then the man-made environment activities. So these are suicide rates in the US in the 2000-2006. The darker the state, the more suicide rate, the lighter, the less. So what do you see? You see that there are specific states, correct? So for example, Alaska with high level of suicides, and then Hawaii with the least amount, okay? What could it be? Winter. The winters can be very harsh in Alaska, not only because of the cold, but because of the darkness, exactly, okay? Hawaii is by the equatorial line, so it's very similar than here. What else?
Population density.
Yes, population density. And on that variable, there are many things about population density. For example, access to community centers because of a trauma or an emergency. When you live in rural areas in the US, sometimes you can really drive more than an hour to get care. And then what happens when you live isolated? You are alone. Now, this is a culture, Asian culture, where Asian cultures in general are very well known because of the sense of community and the importance that it has, the friendships and the family and the friends that becomes a family, correct? But in different cultures, it's not the same because it's just what it is. And some cultures actually enjoy their space, and it could be personal space, it could be physical space. So often in those states that are highlighted, in the agricultural, the certain regions are very isolated. So all these are factors that can be related to that. This is about a stroke in the US that was happening in the 90s. Now, what is interesting is certain characteristics of the South states, where they are in that time, especially the type of food is very different. It's very oily, it's very rich, it's delicious, but it's different. Then at that time also the lack of awareness of physical activities that now we know is really so good for our health, but in the 90s not necessarily. So this study that was supported by NIH really helped to do a lot of interventions to decrease stroke mortality in the 90s that actually were very effective 10 years later. Another factor is time. And this is a graph of when we have the NHANES, that is a big survey that happens on a regular basis in the US, and this is about dental caries and how it compares. It helps to compare in time, whether interventions that we're doing to decrease caries are happening. There are a huge campaign on sealants that are placed in the school, so that allows to see is whatever policy that the government is doing is helpful. And I understand why it is so important to have in our countries one such a survey at least every 10 years or so. So then, as I said, when we have cross-sectional studies, we're talking about pictures. When we have longitudinal studies, we're talking about videos, okay? Question 1, you observe that children in rural areas have more untreated caries than urban children. So which study design are you using right now? Cross-sectional study, good. Okay, so let's move to our analytic studies. I just want to make sure about timing. You let me know, correct? 10 minutes before, you let me know. Thank you. So we have driven by hypothesis, our analytic studies, hypothesis usually asserts causality link, and often, almost all the time, they require new data collection. So, we know now the effects of smoking in our health. But imagine in the 40s, it was not really known. In fact, it was very fashionable. So all these factories will really target different types of cigarettes according to the group. So we have, university college people. Do you know who is these people? Who is this person? Do you know? Getting old. I know it's from my father, but still is a classic. Anyone knows who is this actor?
I didn't recognize him.
No? I have to change. Maybe next time I will put Bad Bunny or something like that. Well, this is an actor, his name is Humphrey Bogart, and he was known because every film he will do, he will actually be smoking because he was a heavy smoker. So this is a classic movie that is called Casablanca. I think some have heard the name. So no? Okay. Homework. I'm serious. So you all have to take the flight. So you will download, and then it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's called Casablanca. That's a homework for you on your way back to your country. I'm going to email you guys, and I'm going to text you, okay? Do an Instagram post or something like that. Okay, and then you have Santa Claus, who will always be smoking. So that's how trendy and normal was smoking at that time. So what happened was the doctor in England, Dawes, he really was seeing way unexpected number of people dying or with cancer, and then the characteristics is almost the smoking. So he says, this is unusual. So he launched a study where he recruited patients from hospitals in the area where he was working at. And then he also collected or recruited individuals who were in the same hospital but with other diseases. And he started to look at what about their smoking habits, among other things. So at the end, he had a large population, and then he really looked into characteristics and what are the odds of that happening randomly compared to smoking. So look what he found. He found that when you have this is an odds ratio comparing the odds of having a disease over the odds of not having the disease given certain characteristics. So whenever you read a manuscript, you see a table, and you see a table that is showing you odds ratios. What does NA mean? Because these are individuals who smoke nothing, 1 to 14 per day, 15 to 24, and so on. And we're comparing the odds ratio here. What does NA means?
Not applicable.
Sorry?
Not applicable.
Yes, why is not applicable? I will give you a hint. You will see in the table either NA, either the number 1, or reference. What does it mean? Any guess? So what does 7.0 odds ratio mean?
Those who smoke have 7 times chance of having
7 times the odds of comparing to whom? To what?
non-smokers.
And who are the non-smokers?
They are the difference.
Yes. So because when you are doing odds ratio, prevalent ratio, anything that is about ratio means that you are comparing something with something. So then, in order for you to do the interpretation, you need to have in your mind what is the control group, what is the reference. So in your table, you will see 3 ways. NA, number 1, and number or reference, okay? So then look how it increases, how the odds increases as you start increasing the number of cigarettes. That's quite significant. So that's what he found after doing this study. And then it was really give the strong grounds for the next level on the study design. But for case control studies, these are observational studies in which existing two groups, and we try to figure it out why they got sick. Now, they require fewer resources, but they give us a very good inference for causal inference, a very good link. Now, what is the trick here is that these type of studies, we want to make sure that we are recruiting them by a status of the disease. That's why these case control studies. So we start of finding who got sick, then we recruited the control groups, and then we try to figure it out why they were sick. So that means that by nature is retrospective. So whenever you read a manuscript and saying, I'm doing a case control study and we recruit and follow them up on time, stop reading that article. Just close and then open another tab, okay? Because by nature it is retrospective, because you are trying to figure it out why they got sick. So one of the most important things, or the most important aspect is how you recruit the control. Because one is an individual, this is almost identical than the one with the case without the factor that you're interested in looking at, correct? So, when Dole conducted his case control studies, he really tried to use the controls within the study population that he was recruiting the cases. So he recruited them from the same hospitals. Now, one important consideration here, and this is more for understanding the math and understanding why we cannot get relative risks, that we will talk about that later, and only odds ratio, is that imagine this population that I created. And so the people in red are the ones who have this specific disease we're interested in, okay? And this is the city that, the town, the village that we're investigating. So we're going to do a case control study. And then how many individuals have the disease there? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many? 9. 9 individuals. Okay. So, can you recruit them the 9? You can, correct? You can go ahead and just collect them, invite your study, and start gathering all the information. How many people without the disease are there? Many. Are we going to have the funds, the time, and the money to recruit them all? No. So what we do? We often get a sample. So we go and recruit specific individuals, correct? So then this is why when we do case control studies, their groups are not balanced because they don't represent in proportionally the population they are coming. We often get more cases that represent the universe of cases and fewer controls that represent the universe of control. So because of that, is that when we do the analysis, it goes through this, computer and the biostatistician land, and they come up with the output. And that's the reason why we gather odds ratio as the way to control disease status and exposure status when we use case control studies. So then again, and I'm going to be really repetitive on this, is that you start your study of case control, recruiting your cases and your control. And then you try to figure it out. What made them sick? In this case, smoking was something that they were interested in, okay? So odds ratio are the output, are the measure of disease that we use. So one of the challenges we have, especially when we start our career as investigators, is that we don't have money, correct? And now, as you get older, you also are not going to have money, but you learn how to get the money. So that's the process, because we are always asking for money, as Christy said. That's just the way of the game. But we get smarter on where and how to get the money. So when you start, often you reach out to your mentor, and you reach out to your mentors because they are successful researchers who already have infrastructure. And the infrastructure could be the physical infrastructure in a lab, or the network, or the system. So they already have a grant going on. So it's normal, and it's actually very convenient that you do nested studies within their, for example, cohorts, when they are following up people because of they are studying aging, or the babies study where they have cohort of children. So you can do cross-sectional studies that are nested there, meaning that you go, oh, within a year I'm going to look at caries in this level. Or you can also look at, do case control study with that. This is an example of that one. Another of our PhD students that was a mentee from Waranut did a very interesting study on babies here in Thailand, and she looked at the impact of different type of feeding on dental caries. So hers was a cohort study. She followed them up for quite a few years, but at certain point she nested a case control study where she looked after at 12 months of age, she looked at salivary components or salivary factors that could be related to increase the predict dental caries. So this is an example of something that you could do when you start your career, when you reach out to your mentor, that sometimes perhaps you could actually gather some specific research question and try to nest in the large cohort. So then the weakness and strength of case control studies is that it's sufficient for rare or delayed outcomes, while the weakness is that you cannot estimate incidence, so you cannot get relative risk. There is no risk to subjects. Why there is no risk to subjects?
It's only yeah.
It's collective.
They're already sick, or they yes, so nothing you can do about that. And then there is absence of attrition. What is that? What is attrition in it's not attrition of the teeth. So we know attrition, abstraction, no, it's not that. So what is in research? Yes, exactly. Attrition is the circumstance where we start losing them because, things happen. You are doing a 2-year follow-up, you get married, you get a new job, you get a new kid, you fall in love, so many things can happen, correct? And then you leave, to go somewhere else. So that's attrition, you lose them. Or sometimes they say, I don't want to do it anymore. That happens too. So when you have case control study, you don't have that risk because you're not following them up. It already happened, okay? Okay, question 2. You want to study oral cancer, better not use. So oral cancer is rare. Which design is most efficient? Yay! Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, so we go now we move fast. So Dole found out that that there was a significant increase of smoking status among this population of British physicians. So what he did is he decided to do now a follow-up study where he recruited some individuals and followed them up on time. At the same time, Americans with Dr. Hammond and Horn studied the same, but in general population. And Dr. Hammond wanted to do it because he was a heavy smoker. So he wanted to prove that smoking was not related to cancer. Yes. Yeah, it was a bad move. So unfortunately, they both found the same in England and in the US with a significant finding that was also associated to other diseases. And unfortunately, Dr. Hammond then later died due to lung cancer. So then they really, using these type of studies that are the cohort studies, they could found that because it's higher level of evidence, so they actually could prove that smoking was causing cancer. So in these cohort studies, we are classifying the subjects not because of the disease status, because of the exposure status. So are these individuals exposed to smoking, yes or no? The disease has not happened yet. So you enroll people without the disease, but you classify them with exposure and not exposure, and you have two types, the prospective and retrospective. So the prospective is very similar to the RCTs. The only difference is that you are not telling them to smoke, and then you are not telling not to smoke. It's just they self-classify, oh, this group is smokers because they smoke, and then you follow them on time. So then the other one is You go, you classify them, and then you try to look at the outcomes that are there. So this is a little bit lengthy, but this is an example of a study that was done in the 90s and the 2000s. It was very trendy in the Scandinavian countries to study about different types of sugars. You know, xylitol, marbitol, mannitol, sorbitol, all these others, okay? So they did a study enrolling or giving the kids options for chewing gums. So each kiddo pick a chewing gum, and then they follow them up on time. They classify them by status and to see which one was the one that was a protective factor in dental caries, and they found the xylitol was. And we now know, because it was the boom of xylitol, right? You're a little bit too young, but it was a boom of xylitol here, blah, blah. But at the end, what happened is that xylitol first is much more expensive, and in order for this to be efficient, you need to chew a lot of xylitol. So it was not really, would not work in real life. Little thing. Here it says, and that's something that you always see. This says crude and adjusted for gender, age, number of surfaces, and blah, blah, blah. What does adjusted mean? What does in this case gender, age, and so on mean? What are the researchers telling you? Yes.
It is adjusted to minimize the bias, like
It's
confounding
related,
factors.
exactly.
Confounding factors.
So it's related to bias, to balance the group. So that means that those factors were considered confounders. Confounders is a variable that is related to the exposure of interest, is related to the outcome of interest, but is not in the pathway between exposure and disease. So the authors is telling you, hey, by the way, we think that these factors might be a little bit fishy, so we want to make sure that we are adjusted for that so our results are valid, okay? So that's what it means. This is a longitudinal study on the impact of breastfeeding with or without. That's the result of Sirima's work after she did the whole study. So it was a long study. She enrolled like tons of little kids, and it was very successful on having and demonstrated that there was actually a link, an association there. Now, the retrospective cohort study is the similar concept. The difference is that it started before today. So imagine, I know you're not pediatric dentists, the majority, except two, but you know what a pulpotomy is, correct? I mean, we were all taught about pulpotomies, okay. So imagine that you want to prove or you want to investigate a new medicine that can be compared to MTA, okay? Because MTA is the standard of care now. In my time, it was Fromocresol. We don't use that anymore. So that's how old I am. We do a new product. And it happens that, some of the faculty have been using these new products since 2021. So what we're going to do as a cohort study, we're going to look at the individuals who received MTA and who received the new product in 2021 and see in the charts how they did until December 2025. So actually you have two groups, the group that received the MTA, the group that received the other product, and you are following them on time, and the time is in this way, is not retrospective. Why we call it retrospective? Because it happens before, but the concept is the same. We're not recruiting because it happened now. We're recruiting them in 2021, meaning the charts, okay? The same, we try to, unlike case control studies, we are classifying them by exposure and non-exposure, and then we see who got sick and which not, okay? This is an example from fluorosis in Germany. So they look at community level, which community or villages receive certain amount of fluoride in the water, because it varies by communities. Hey, so, and then they were looking at how the level of fluorosis or dental caries varies by community. Again, it happened before they started. It happened some years, and that's what they found, okay? So we have the strength, we know that the exposure precedes the outcome. Why? Because when you enroll, people were not sick. People did not have fluorosis. People did not have dental caries. People did not have cancer. Okay? You can estimate incidence, so you can get relative risk, and then it's very efficient for rare exposures, but it's not efficient for rare outcomes. Why is not efficient for rare outcome? What is a rare outcome? Oral cancer. Okay? Oral cancer is rare, correct? So imagine that you are doing this study and you put a new product on MTA and you want to compare if it causes oral cancer. What's going to happen? You're going to be sitting down for decades until you find a case, correct? Because per se, oral cancer is rare. So imagine oral cancer after that. So that's the reason why these are not efficient. So which study design will be the most efficient for rare cases? Case control, exactly, because and what this is about 10% in the prevalence, because you already are starting with people who are sick, okay? And I'm finishing it up. So, third question. You already have dental records on the past 10 years and want to study fluoride exposure and fluorosis. What type of study would you do?
Retrospective.
Exactly, core retrospective, okay? So, while cores, you're always looking to the future in terms of temporality, case control, you're always trying to go to the past, what made them sick. And I think that's it for now. So it was a 100-meter race to get all this information, okay? But we're here the whole 5 days, so please reach out to us whenever you need any questions. So, questions? No? That's a lot of information. Yes, please.
I still confused about the observation and relative risk. So like in the sample, in the diagram that you put, like if we have patient with cancer, let's say oral cancer, in a big population, like the oral cancer maybe just 9, and then you say that all the other people is healthy, but it's like bigger, but we will just choose like randomly 9, then it is not proportionate
That's
to
a
the.
very good
Then
question.
how can like we
Yes. So a very good question. You actually, if you have 9 people that are sick, the ratio of your controls is usually 3 to 1. So you have 3 controls per 1 case. Okay, because 1-on-1 it will not be whatsoever. So they having research on what is the appropriate and the most efficient ratio, because now is that if you do more than 3 to 1, it's really the amount of the expenses and the efforts does not justify to go for more than 3 to 1. So usually 3 to 1. 3 controls per 1 case. Good. Other question?
Thank you, Prof. I have one question
Yes.
regarding the Google Forms data collection, especially for the undergraduates. Nowadays, we have the habit of collecting data using the Google Forms. And whenever we submit a paper to a journal, the reviewer's first question is, why are you going for a Google Form data collection or questionnaire? So how can we standardize this, and what are the ethical considerations we should take it in our mind whenever we are going for Google Forms?
I think you know the schedule, correct? Because the next lecture is about ethics. Okay. But I want just to bring up something about Google Forms. There is now a highly used way to collect data that is using a software that is called RedCap. And I believe probably, Christy, you're going to talk more about that. RedCap is a type of software that allows you to do forms like Google,